All right, so let's do a little bit of analysis. This is the Chopin Prelude in C minor. And this analysis is not going to go too deep. I'd like to do another video where I, look at larger scale things that are unfolding in the piece. But this analysis will mostly focus on just analyze individual chords and how they're working in their immediate context. This is a video for my students at UW-Whitewater to prepare them for their final, but I'm putting it out there for anyone who wants to watch and learn. So here's the piece. If you don't have a copy of it, if you're my student and you haven't done any work with this, you can do a screenshot of this, you can pause the video, and we're going to start by working through the first phrase, which is the first four measures of the piece. And this is the Chopin Prelude number 20 in C minor from Opus 28. This is the entire piece. It's 13 measures long. We have a 4-measure phrase, another 4-measure phrase. That phrase then repeats, and then we get just a chord at the end. All right, so we're in C minor. We have a key signature of 3 flats. We start on a C chord. We end on a C chord. I see B naturals plus it says C minor. Okay. So this first phrase, we can just label the harmonies. When I do analysis, I like to keep this clean, but I'm going to keep my analysis clean, but I'm going to mark this up a lot with a lot of extraneous stuff, just as a way to have a physical record of what I'm talking about. You want to get to the point where you don't need to add all of this extra stuff on to the analysis. You want to be able to have this clean and say, I can see this is a C minor chord with C in the bass, therefore it's a 1 chord. Okay. Now, if there are chords that are challenging, we might want to, look at them and see there's G, B, D, F, and so on, and figure out what the chord is and write it up top. Like if I wrote this was a C minor triad. That's something I can do to just hold that information while I figure out what it is in the key. But we want to get to the point where we can do that just in our head. All right, let's look at this next chord. We've got F, A flat, C, E flat. We double the A flat. That's an F minor 7 chord. Okay, it's F minor 7. Here, let me get my lock in my focus. Okay, and F is 4 in the key of C minor. It's got a 7 on it. It's the 4-7 chord. Right here, this spot is interesting because if we look, we see G, B, G, D, and F. All of those notes make a G7 chord, but this E flat doesn't fit in the chord. Okay, but there are 8 notes here, and 7 of them form a G7 chord. There's a G in the bass in octaves. It makes perfect sense to go from 1 to 4 to 5 and back to 1. So this is a G7 chord right here. And this is a 5-7. This E flat right here is held over from the previous chord, and then it resolves down to the actual note. That's called a suspension. By suspending the E flat over, we get these parallel thirds right here, the G and E flat and the D and the F. And this takes us to C minor, back to here, which is to 1. So if we hear this, we've got 1, 4, 5, 7. Do you hear that note? Needs to resolve. It's a complete harmonic cycle. We have tonic, predominant, dominant, tonic. I need some isolation for my camera because when I play a chord, it vibrates. So I'll try to play softly. Right here, this is a complete harmonic cycle. This is tonic, predominant, dominant, tonic. Now, I just want to play the first 2 measures for you and see what you notice. Here's measure 2. measure 2 is the exact same thing as measure 1. It's just in a different key. And there are chromatically altered chords here, but we can account for that by understanding that this is this idea in a different key. Let's just label the chords and then we'll deal with the Roman numerals after. So right here I see A flat, C, E flat. That's an A flat major chord. Right here we have a chromatic alteration. We got this D flat, F, A flat. That's a D flat major chord. There's no D flat major in the key of C minor diatonically, but let's just label this right now and we'll come back to it. Right here I see E flat, G, B flat, D flat, D flat. This is exactly the same issue we had over here. 7 of the 8 notes on this beat belong to an E flat 7 chord, except for this C right here. Okay, this time this note is not a suspension, but it's a passing note, filling in from D flat down to B flat. All right, so this is an E flat 7, and here's an A flat chord. So we can explain the chords in this measure in kind of a myopic manner. We could say that A flat is 6, and then we could say this E flat, this is a chromatically altered chord, E flat, G, B flat, D flat, which makes it a secondary dominant of 5, 7 of 6. And given this context, this D flat chord right here, it's a 4 chord in the key of A flat. It's parallel to what's happening here. So we call this 4. Sorry, 4 of 6. All right. This analysis, however, obscures the fact that this is the same thing as this. It's just in the key of A flat. So I would like to suggest we could write it this way. We could replicate this progression, adapting it to major. It's 1, 4, 5, 7, 1, all of 6. Okay, so it's just doing that progression. Here it does it in tonic. Here it does the same progression in 6, which is a major key right here. Let me play those 2 measures for you. 1, 4, 5, 7. And 1, 4, 5, 7, 1. All right, so we go on now. We get lots of chromaticism. Right here I see G, B, D, F. That's a G7 chord. Now this looks highly chromatic, okay, but we have to remember that the D natural is actually canceling out the D flat in the previous measure. So that's just a return to our key signature. And the B natural comes from harmonic minor. This is just the 5-7 chord. It's the same chord that we had right here. Normally we would expect a 5-7 chord to go to 1, and it does go to a C chord, which is 1, but this is a chromatically altered C chord. It's C, E, G, B flat, so that's a C7. We have to call that a secondary dominant. Okay, C7 is 5 in the key of F. F is 4 in the key of C, so this is a 5-7 of 4. And then we would expect that to go to a 4 chord, and we get F, A flat, C, and F. That's an F minor chord. And this G right here does not fit in the chord. This is not an F minor add 9. That's just a... You see these notes are circling around F, E, G, F. It's an incomplete upper neighbor to the F. Another name for that is appoggiatura. So this takes us just to our 4 triad. And then the 4 triad goes to the 1 triad right here. Okay, we have more chromaticism in the next measure. You know what, I'll go to a different color to keep the measures distinct. Right here, this is D, F sharp, A, and C. D, F sharp, A, and C, that's a major triad minor 7. That is a D7. And that is 5-7 of something. Okay, D is 2 in the key of C, and a 2 chord wants to go to the 5 chord if we follow circle of fifths. So this is a 5/7 of 5. Another way to think of it is D is 5 in the key of G. G is 5 in the key of C. Therefore, this is a 5/7 of 5. We'd expect it to go to a 5, and it goes to a 5. Essentially, this is a little 5/7 to 1 on the 5 chord. And then right here, we've got, again, D, F sharp, A, C. And we have this note right here that is an incomplete upper neighbor to that A, or an appoggiatura. So this is a D7 again. This is 5/7 of 5 to 5, and this goes to a 5 chord. Okay. It would be possible to analyze this measure like this, where we said 5/7 1, 5/7 1, all of 5. But it doesn't seem as accurate here, because here this actually sounds like we've arrived on a 1 chord. To me here, this sounds like we've arrived on a 5 chord that needs to resolve. So I prefer in this spot to keep this as we're tonicizing the 5 chord and we're tonicizing the 5 chord. And the 5 chord is not acting like a 1 chord. It's just, king for a day, and it has its own dominant. All right, so here's the first phrase. 1, 4, 5/7, 1. And then in the key of 6, 1, 4, 5/7, 1. And from there, 5/7. That's just the 5/7 to 5/7 of 4. And then 4 in the 1 chord. Now we get D7, that's 5/7 of 5. See right there? To me, that sounds like a half cadence. It needs to resolve to 1. And we do resolve to 1 right here. This is a 1 chord. C minor. All right, so this phrase, this now begins a new phrase, and the music changes significantly. Over here you see the bass is leaping. These are all root position chords. And now we get a linear bass line, descending chromatic scale down to so, and then it continues down. Let me zoom out just a little bit so I can get here. Refocus. Okay. So the music changes here, plus we have fortissimo down to piano. It's a contrasting style. Now, there are a few chords in here that my students don't have yet the tools to label. So to my students, if something like this were on the exam, I'd mark the chords that you don't need to label, such as these two right here. Okay, but I mean, you can try to figure them out. I think you should try to figure them out. And also this chord right here. Okay, so that these are chords that you haven't learned what they are and how they work just yet. Okay, this one right here, we addressed this chord very briefly, but we never really did anything with it. So, if you want to try to figure out that chord, I say go for it. Anyway, let's talk about this. Okay, so right here, we've got this 1 chord. C sustains in the bass, but this G moves up to A flat. This makes an A flat, C, E flat chord. That's A flat major. That again is 6, but with C in the bass, it's first inversion. Now right here, we've got B, D, A flat. This F sharp does not make sense with this chord. B, D, F sharp, and A flat doesn't really make sense. Okay, that F sharp is just a lower neighbor to the G that is following. Right there, it's leading there. So right here we've got B. I'm going to do this over here. we've got B, D, and A flat. I just do this with accidentals. Do you see how there's a note? This is an incomplete chord. And the only note we can add to this for it to make sense as a chord we know would be an F natural. And that would make this a B diminished 7 chord. Okay. This chord, B diminished 7, you might think it's chromatically altered, but this is really just the 7 diminished 7 that we get in the key of C minor if we're using harmonic minor. Okay, so right here now, this is G, B flat, D. This is a G minor chord. We can have a G minor chord in the key of C. Most often we're using harmonic minor and we have a G major chord, but we can use natural minor because the bass is descending, and this is the minor 5 chord. Okay. Right over here, this chord also is a chord that's coming about because of what happens with the 6th and 7th scale degrees in minor. Okay, so if you think in C minor, I'll write the key signature. If we have C minor, okay, that's C natural minor right there. Okay, we can add in the B natural. That gives us C harmonic minor. Now if we want to make melodic minor, if we want to avoid this melodic augmented second, we can add this natural. And then when we descend, we can go back to natural minor. So essentially, between G and C, we have all of the notes available to us. We have flat 6 and 6, flat 7, and raised 7. So we could think so, lay, la, te, ti, do, or whatever. So this is filling in chromatically. So this chord right here, we've got, I'll do it in the bass clef this time. I want the key signature. B flat, E flat, A flat, and it's an A natural in the bass. And we have C and we have G. Okay, do you see, just like up here, there was a note missing? Right here, there's a note missing. Okay, we could say that A does come from the key of C minor because it's the 6th scale degree from melodic minor. C is here and G. If we were to fill this in and respect the key signature, this would be an A half diminished 7 chord. Okay, when we have a chromatically altered chord that is a half diminished 7, we often think of that as a secondary 7 chord of something. But that's not what is happening here, because it's not resolving as a secondary 7 chord. We're passing through this chord. Now, I don't expect you to be able to label this chord, but if we were to label it, do you see that this is the 6th chord with the root of the chord coming from melodic minor, right? So if we came up here, we went to this 6th chord with the raised 6th scale degree and stacked up in the key signature, we would get this A half diminished 7. If we're going to have this chord and we're going to label it using diatonic Roman numerals, we have to call this sharp 6 half diminished 7. So this is the half diminished 7 chord built on the raised 6th scale degree. And we're okay with this because in minor we have this flexibility with the 6th and 7th scale degrees. Okay, so I wouldn't expect you, for my students, to be able to come up with this right now. And the next chord as well. It looks like it's going to be a D, F sharp, A, C chord, but the problem is we have this A flat in here. I'm not going to go into this chord, but this is our good friend, the French augmented 6th chord. Okay, we'll talk about that another time. Right here, this is a G chord, G, B, D. So that's 5. And then here this is G still, G, B, D with F in the bass. So it becomes a 5, 4, 2. We'd expect 5 to go to 1. With a 4, 2, that means the 7 is in the bass. So we would expect that 1 to be in root position. And our expectations are realized. And then this goes to 4. And now we have a B in the bass. We have G, B, D, F. This is 5, 6, 5 going to 1, right? So we're back. We had this sort of heavily chromatic descent here, and then we're back to pretty basic harmonic motion, 5 to 1, 4, 5, 1. Okay. There's kind of a cool thing here. Do you remember at the beginning we go 1, 4, 5, 1, and we have the voice that goes G, A flat, G, F, E flat? And look here. If you look at this inner voice, I see a G, and then this goes to A flat, G flat, F, E flat. So we've had this descending thing, and out of the inner voice, the original melody crops up. And that C pops down here, and the melody takes over to take us down to the bottom. And in fact, we continue this melody right here, but it's reharmonized. Okay. Right here, we're just going to call this a 6 chord because this does not do a cycle in A flat like we had up here. Okay, we're going to skip this D flat major chord for a minute. Right here, this is G7, which is 5, 7, and we go to 1. This chord right here, this is a D flat major chord. Okay, it's not a secondary dominant because D flat is 5 of G flat, and G flat is nothing in the key of C minor, and it goes to G. It's a chromatically altered 2 chord. We do go 2, 5, 1. It's a flat 2 major chord. The name for a flat 2 major chord is the Neapolitan chord. Usually it's in first inversion. This is just an unusual version of this chord. Again, this is not something I'd expect you to be able to analyze. Let me play through this second phrase for you and just point out a few things along the way. So we've got here minor. We go to that 6 chord. There's our 7. Minor 5. This chord right here on the downbeat of 6, that's that sharp 6 half diminished 7. You see there's no E flat in the chord, and you might say, well, how do we know it's half diminished if the E flat is not there? Couldn't it be an A minor 7 chord? But given the context we just heard, right here, if I were to play an E natural in that chord, it doesn't sound right. But the E flat fits the harmony that we have, the harmonic context. So there's our sharp 6 half diminished 7, French augmented 6 chord, and now we're on 5. 5, 4, 2, 1, 6. And here's this 6 to flat 2 and 5 to 1. To me, this also sounds like we're going 5, 1 on D flat and 5, 1 on C minor. I wanted to point out here where the melody emerges from the middle of the texture. And also up here, do you see the middle of the texture is taking this G A flat melody, and that's how we move from the first chord to the next chord. So looking at this second phrase here, that's how we move from the first chord to the second chord. That's the melody at the beginning. Try to bring the middle voice out. Now listen right here. You hear that emerges from the middle of that texture? changes. And then it repeats. There we go, Prelude in C minor. This is a progression I enjoy improvising over. So a little lagniappe for you at the end. So, all right, so this is the analysis. We could go deeper into this. There's actually really cool stuff going on. Like this first measure centers on C. Let me do a different color. And this measure centers on A flat. And this measure leads to F minor before coming back to C. And then we go to G and 1. So we could see that this is C down to F to G and to C. That's what happens right here in the first measure of the bass. Similarly, do you see this is C right here? And it walks down through A flat, all the way down to F, and circles back to F. So this is C down to F, and then we come around to G and C. So again, this thing right here is sort of spelled out over this whole progression. It's not remarkable. This is how tonal music works. It's just, we take this simple idea, tonic, predominant, dominant, tonic, and spin out a piece of music at different time scales from it. And they're nested within. It's rather fractal in its organization. All right, so that's it. That's the piece. Let me just play the whole thing for you. You don't have to listen if you don't want to, but maybe listen for some of the things, and I won't mess around with it at the end. I'll play it full volume, so be prepared for a shaky camera. Sorry. I played the E flat there. I should go back and edit that, but probably no one made it this far anyway. So, all right, thanks everybody. That's all for now.